Winter of 1853. The snowfall had begun early that year, as if the heavens themselves sought to shroud the northern English countryside in a premature blanket of forgetfulness. Sophia Zellwick watched the flakes drift past her frost-etched window, her fingers absently tracing the worn edges of the letter that had arrived that morning. The Bramley Hospital for Wounded Soldiers was seeking volunteer nurses for the winter season. Another year, another winter of the forgotten, she murmured, setting the letter aside. At 32, Sophia had made peace with her solitary existence at Meadowvale Cottage. 5 years a widow, she had learned to carry her grief like a familiar shawl, not always visible but ever present. Her late husband, a respected country doctor, had left her with a modest inheritance, medical knowledge, and the persistent whispers that followed her through the village. "Did you hear?" they would say. Dr. Zellwick's wife. The one who couldn't save him. She had tried every remedy, every treatment she knew when the fever took him. Yet in the end, she had failed the only person who had ever truly seen her, not as the orphaned girl of questionable parentage, but as a woman worthy of respect and love. That failure had crystallized into a truth she carried close, caring too deeply only made the inevitable loss more devastating. Better to keep one's heart guarded, to help without attachment, to live without expectation of happiness. Her decision to volunteer at the hospital was not born of compassion but of practicality. The winter would be long, and idleness had become her enemy. Besides, the soldiers would eventually leave, perfect recipients for her careful, clinical care. She would heal their bodies without entangling her heart. She had learned that lesson all too well. The Bramley Hospital occupied a former earl's estate, its grand ballroom now lined with iron beds, its ornate ceiling looking down upon the suffering of men broken by the Crimean conflict. Sophia arrived with the first heavy snowfall, her few possessions packed in a single trunk, her medical instruments, inherited from her husband, wrapped carefully in velvet cloth. Matron Mills, a stern woman with eyes that missed nothing, assessed Sophia with a single glance. "Mrs. Zellwick, you come with recommendations from Dr. Hargreaves. He speaks highly of your skills." "My late husband ensured my education was thorough," Sophia replied evenly. "Good. We have no patience for fainting violets here. You'll be assigned the North Wing. 15 patients, mostly officers, mostly recovering. Change dressings, administer medications, report any changes in condition." She hesitated. "The last bed contains our most difficult case. Captain Quinn. Fever, delirium, wounded at Balaclava. The surgeons have done what they can, but—" She shook her head. "He's been unconscious for days." Sophia nodded, already assessing the supply she would need. "I understand. Do you, Mrs. Zellwick? Many of these men have no one waiting for them. They fight not just their wounds but their despair. Remember that." Sophia stiffened. "I am here to treat their bodies, matron. Their spirits are beyond my province." The older woman's lips thinned. "Then pray that is sufficient, Mrs. Zellwick." The North Wing was quieter than Sophia had expected, the groans of injured men muffled by thick stone walls. She moved efficiently from bed to bed, learning names, assessing wounds, memorizing medication schedules. The men watched her with varying degrees of hope and resignation, and she maintained a professional distance, her voice steady, her hands gentle but impersonal. At the last bed, partially concealed behind a screen, she paused. The man lay motionless, his face obscured by several days' growth of beard, his breathing shallow. A bandage wrapped around his torso spoke of a serious wound, while the heat radiating from his skin confirmed the fever matron had mentioned. "Captain Quinn," she said softly, though she doubted he could hear. "I am Mrs. Zellwick. I will be caring for you." She worked methodically, changing the bandage on his side to reveal an ugly wound that had been stitched but still seeped. Infection. She cleaned it carefully, noting with clinical detachment that beneath the dirt and blood, he was younger than she had initially thought, perhaps in his mid-30s. His strong jaw and the fine lines around his closed eyes suggested a man accustomed to authority, while his hands, though now limp against the sheets, bore calluses that contradicted the typical softness of aristocratic officers. As she worked, he stirred, his cracked lips parting. "Bridge must hold." "You're at Bramley Hospital, Captain," she said calmly. "The battle is over." His eyes opened briefly, startlingly blue against his fever-flushed skin, before sliding closed again. "No, never over?" For a moment, something in his lost expression tugged at her carefully constructed defenses. Then she remembered her promise to herself: care for the body, protect the heart. She completed her tasks with efficiency and moved on, refusing to acknowledge the strange feeling that lingered as she left his bedside. That night, as snow continued to fall outside the hospital windows, Sophia wrote in her journal, "I shall approach this winter as I have the past 5, with pragmatism and purpose. These men need healing, not sentiment. I shall provide what I can give without depleting myself. That is all anyone can ask." What she did not write, what she barely acknowledged even to herself, was how the captain's feverish words had echoed in her dreams: never over. Never over. The second week of Sophia's service brought a bitter cold snap that sent frost crawling up the hospital windows and turned breath to vapor inside the wards. It also brought Captain Quinn's fever to a dangerous peak. "He won't survive another night like this," the young hospital physician, Dr. Emerson, declared after a brief examination. "His body is too weakened." "What do you recommend?" Sophia asked, already preparing cool cloths for the captain's burning forehead. "Prayer, Mrs. Zellwick. Medical science has reached its limits here." She stared at the doctor, indignation flaring. "My husband never believed in limits, Dr. Emerson." "Nor do I." After the physician departed with a skeptical shake of his head, Sophia settled into the chair beside Captain Quinn's bed, determined to prove her words true. Through the night, she battled his fever with cool compresses, spoonfuls of water, and willow bark tea administered drop by drop between his parched lips. She spoke to him continuously, her voice a lifeline as he thrashed against invisible enemies. "Be still, Captain," she commanded when he attempted to rise. "Your battle is here now." "Can't see." He gasped, his eyes wild but unseeing. "Then trust what you hear," she replied, surprising herself with the gentleness in her voice. "I am with you." His hand found hers in the darkness, fingers gripping with unexpected strength. "Don't leave." "I won't," she promised, though a warning voice in her mind reminded her of the danger of such assurances. Near dawn, as the first grey light filtered through the frost-covered windows, his fever broke. Sophia, exhausted beyond measure, felt his forehead with trembling fingers and found it cool and damp with healthy perspiration. The captain's breathing had steadied, his face relaxed into true sleep rather than fevered unconsciousness. She allowed herself a moment of unprofessional triumph, her hand still held in his. Then, recalling her principles, she gently extricated her fingers and stood, stretching her stiff limbs. "Well done, Captain," she whispered. "Perhaps you are a fighter after all." She was arranging his blankets when his eyes opened, clear now, alert, and intensely blue. They fixed on her face with an unsettling focus. "You stayed," he said, his voice hoarse but stronger than she had yet heard it. "It is my duty," she replied, automatically retreating into formality. A faint smile touched his lips. "Then I am fortunate in your sense of obligation, Mrs. Zellwick." "Sophia Zellwick." She busied herself with straightening his pillows. "How are you feeling, Captain Quinn?" "Like I've been trampled by the light brigade." He winced as he shifted position. "But considerably better than I deserve to be, thanks to your care. You remember nothing of the night." "Fragments." "Your voice." "Your hands." His gaze remained disconcertingly direct. "Your promise not to leave." Sophia felt heat rise in her cheeks, an unfamiliar sensation after years of carefully maintained composure. "The fever has passed, but you remain seriously wounded. You must rest and avoid any exertion. Even conversation? Especially conversation that taxes your strength." She turned away, arranging medical supplies with unnecessary precision. "I have other patients to attend to. I'll return to change your dressing later." As she moved to leave, his voice stopped her. "My name is Oliver. Captain Oliver Quinn. Since we've spent the night together, it seems only fair you should know." She paused at the screen, not looking back. "Rest, Captain Quinn. Doctor's orders." His soft chuckle followed her as she walked away, and she was dismayed to find herself smiling in response, a reflex she thought had died with her husband. She quickly composed her features before the other patients could notice. This is precisely why distance is essential, she reminded herself. The captain is merely grateful for medical attention. Once recovered, he will return to his life, as all soldiers do. My duty is to ensure that recovery, nothing more. But as the days passed and Captain Quinn, Oliver, as she reluctantly began to think of him, grew stronger, Sophia found her carefully constructed barriers challenged in ways she hadn't anticipated. Unlike her other patients, who treated her with a mixture of respect and detachment, Oliver observed her with undisguised interest. He asked questions about her medical knowledge, listened intently to her explanations, and remembered details about her routine that she herself sometimes forgot. "You haven't eaten today," he noted one afternoon as she changed his bandage. "You always touch your hairpin after skipping breakfast, did you know that? You should be focusing on your own recovery, not my habits," she replied, deliberately keeping her hands away from her hair. "Observation kept me alive as a soldier. Hard to break the habit." He winced as she applied a fresh poultice to his wound. "Besides, your habits are considerably more pleasant to observe than enemy movements." "I'm hardly," she began, then stopped herself. "Your wound is healing well. The infection is clearing. Thanks to your care. Dr. Emerson told me I owe you my life." "Dr. Emerson exaggerates. He said you stayed with me all night. That you refused to give up when he had." Sophia focused intently on securing the bandage. Any nurse would have done the same. "No." His hand covered hers, stilling her movements. "They wouldn't have. I know enough of the world to recognize exceptional care when I receive it." She withdrew her hand carefully. "You're an officer, Captain. You naturally received priority. Is that what you tell yourself?" His eyes held hers. "That you would have done the same for anyone." "Of course," she said, but something in her voice lacked conviction. He smiled slightly. "Then I'm doubly fortunate to receive such care, and to have it come from someone who cares so deeply while pretending not to care at all." The accuracy of his observation startled her into momentary silence. Before she could form a suitable response, Matron Mills appeared beside the bed. "Mrs. Zellwick, you have other patients requiring attention," she said pointedly. "Of course, Matron." Sophia gathered her supplies, grateful for the interruption. As she walked away, she heard Matron address Oliver. "Captain Quinn, I understand you're recovering well. We've received an inquiry about your condition from the Duke of Westhaven's secretary. Apparently, His Grace is concerned about your welfare." "How kind of him," Oliver replied, his tone suddenly formal. "Please inform the secretary that I am improving and require no assistance at present." Sophia's steps slowed despite herself. The Duke of Westhaven was among the wealthiest peers in England, with estates across 3 counties. What connection could Captain Quinn have to such a powerful figure? But she forced herself to continue walking. Captain Quinn's social connections were none of her concern. Her duty was to heal his body, not unravel his past. Yet as she tended to her other patients, she found her thoughts returning to the question, and to the man whose perceptive gaze seemed to see through the careful armor she had constructed around her heart. That evening, as snowdrifts piled against the hospital walls and the wind howled like a wounded animal, Sophia sat alone in her small chamber and wrote in her journal, "I find myself thinking of Captain Q more than is appropriate for a nurse. His recovery progresses well, too well, perhaps. Soon he will leave, as all patients must. This strange interest I feel will fade. It must. I have built my life around the principle that attachment leads only to pain. One night of fever watch does not change that fundamental truth." Outside her window, the winter deepened its hold on the countryside, unaware that within the stone walls of Bramley Hospital, something long frozen had begun, against all odds, to thaw. "Do you ever wonder who they were before the war?" Oliver asked one afternoon in late December, watching as Sophia organized the small dispensary near his bed. She glanced at the other men in the ward, some reading, others staring vacantly at the ceiling or engaged in quiet conversation. "Their previous lives are not my concern. Their recovery is." "So clinical, Mrs. Zellwick." His voice held gentle amusement rather than criticism. "Don't you find it curious? Lieutenant Blackwell there was a carpenter. Created the most intricate cabinets in Yorkshire, he tells me. And Sergeant Mills, no relation to our formidable matron, was studying to be a barrister before he enlisted." "And you, Captain?" she asked before she could stop herself. "What were you before?" Something guarded flickered across his face. "A disappointment, mostly." "To whom?" "My father. Society. Myself, occasionally." He shifted position, wincing slightly. "I was meant for one life and chose another." The cavalry offered clarity. Sophia's hand stilled on the medicine bottles. "Clarity through war? That seems a contradiction." "Not at all. In battle, everything is reduced to its essence. Live or die. Fight or surrender. Protect your men or fail them. No social niceties, no complex expectations, just the truth of who you are when everything else is stripped away." She considered this. "And who are you, Captain, when everything is stripped away?" His blue eyes held hers. "I'm still discovering that. Perhaps you might help me find the answer." The intimacy of his gaze unsettled her. "I help you recover your physical strength. Your self-discovery is your own journey." "Is it?" He smiled slightly. "Then why do I feel I've learned more about myself in these conversations with you than in years of introspection?" "Fever delirium has strange effects," she replied, closing the dispensary cabinet with finality. He laughed, the sound warming the cold hospital air. "Always an explanation that keeps you safely distant. One day, Mrs. Zellwick, I hope to discover what you're protecting yourself from with such dedication." "I protect nothing but my professional boundaries, Captain." She straightened her apron. "Now, if you're well enough for philosophical debates, you're well enough for your walking exercises. Shall we attempt the corridor today?" Oliver accepted her deflection with grace, allowing her to help him stand. He was considerably stronger now, though he still leaned on her arm as they made their slow way to the corridor. The press of his body against her side, the clean scent of his skin, the warmth of his breath near her cheek, all created a physical awareness Sophia had thought long dead. "Tell me about your husband," he said suddenly as they paused by a window overlooking the snow-covered grounds. She stiffened. "That is not appropriate conversation." "Forgive me. I only thought—" He hesitated. "You wear his ring but never speak of him. Sometimes grief needs voice to find its resolution." "My grief is my own, Captain." The words emerged sharper than intended. "As is your happiness, I imagine." His voice softened. "Was he a good man, your doctor?" Despite her resolve, Sophia found herself answering. "The best I've known. He saw worth in me when others saw only an orphaned girl with questionable prospects. He saw truly, then." She glanced up, startled by the certainty in his tone. "And he was a doctor?" Oliver continued. "Is that where your medical knowledge comes from?" "Yes." He believed women could understand medicine as well as men. "He taught me everything he knew." "Everything except how to continue living after he was gone," Oliver observed quietly. The truth of it struck her like a physical blow. 5 years a widow, and she had been merely existing, a ghost moving through the motions of life. "We should return," she said abruptly. "You're tiring." "Not at all. But I've clearly tired you with my presumption." He touched her hand briefly. "Forgive me, Sophia. Some boundaries should be respected, even by impertinent patients." The use of her Christian name, the gentle pressure of his fingers on hers, the genuine contrition in his eyes, all combined to create a dangerous crack in her defenses. She withdrew her hand and stepped back. "Tomorrow we'll try walking to the main hall," she said, retreating to the safety of medical instruction. "Your strength improves daily." "Thanks to you." His eyes held hers. "For someone determined to remain detached, you excel at healing, Mrs. Zellwick. One might almost think you care." She had no answer that wouldn't expose the confusion in her heart. Instead, she guided him back to his bed and busied herself with adjusting his pillows, maintaining the physical routine that allowed her to avoid the emotional terrain he so easily navigated. That night, unable to sleep, Sophia stood at the window of her small room watching snow fall in the moonlight. Oliver Quinn had become more than a patient. He had become a mirror, reflecting back the lonely fortress she had built around herself, and for the first time in years, she questioned whether its walls truly protected her or merely imprisoned her. "This is madness," she whispered to the empty room. "He will leave when he's healed." "They all leave." But even as she spoke the words, she recognized the fear beneath them, not that he would leave, but that before he did, he might awaken feelings she had carefully buried with her husband. Feelings that made one vulnerable to devastating loss. Outside, the winter wind moaned around the eaves, carrying snow that would soon blanket all evidence of human passage. By spring, there would be no trace of the footprints they had made together in the hospital corridor. By spring, Oliver Quinn would be gone, returned to whatever life awaited him beyond Bramley's walls. This knowledge should have comforted her. Instead, it hollowed something inside her chest and left an ache she had no medicine to cure. Christmas arrived at Bramley with modest festivity. The local vicar's wife organized greenery for the wards, and the kitchen produced a special dinner that, while simple, offered a welcome change from the usual hospital fare. Sophia, working through the holiday as she had every year since her husband's death, found herself unexpectedly moved by the small celebrations taking place around her. "You look thoughtful, Mrs. Zellwick," Oliver observed as she brought him his portion of Christmas pudding. He sat propped up in bed, stronger now, his wound healing well enough that he could move without wincing. Does the season bring difficult memories? She arranged his tray carefully. Christmas is merely another day that requires medical attention. Is it? He studied her face. Then why does the carol from the village children make you pause each time they reach the verse about comfort and joy? Sophia glanced up, startled by his perception. You notice too much, Captain. Only about you. His smile was gentle. Won't you sit with me a moment? Consider it a Christmas kindness to a lonely soldier. Against her better judgment, she settled into the chair beside his bed. You seem to have plenty of company. I've seen the letters that arrive for you nearly every day. Correspondence isn't company. He gestured to a small package on his bedside table. Though I did receive something I'd like to share with you, if you'll permit me. Before she could protest, he handed her the package. Open it. Please. Hesitantly, she unwrapped the brown paper to reveal a small, leather-bound volume of poetry. Wordsworth, she read from the cover. My sister sent it. I mentioned in a letter that you sometimes quote him when you think no one is listening. Heat rose to her face. I didn't realize. That I listen when you speak? Even when you're speaking to yourself? His expression grew serious. I listen to everything about you, Sophia. Your footsteps in the corridor. The way your breath catches when you're moved by something you think you shouldn't feel. The sadness in your voice when you speak of the past. Captain Quinn, Oliver, he corrected gently. After all these weeks, surely we've earned the right to our Christian names. She closed the book carefully. Oliver, then. This is very thoughtful, but I cannot accept such a personal gift. It's only a book. It's an acknowledgement of observation. Interest. It suggests a connection beyond that of nurse and patient. And is there not? He leaned forward, close enough that she could see the flecks of darker blue in his eyes. Can you honestly say you feel nothing beyond professional duty when you sit beside me? When we speak of poetry and loss and the strange paths that brought us both to this place. Sophia stood abruptly. I should check on the other patients. Running away again. His voice was soft but carried a hint of challenge. Tell me, do you fear me, or yourself? I fear nothing, Captain. She placed the book firmly on his table. I simply understand boundaries. Boundaries? He shook his head. Or barriers? What are you protecting yourself from, Sophia? She met his gaze directly. Pain. Disappointment. The inevitable end of things that cannot last. You will leave here when you're healed, return to your life, your connections. The Duke of Westhaven's secretary inquires after you weekly. Clearly, you have a place in the world beyond these walls. Something complicated crossed his expression. And if I wanted to create a new place? One that included you. That is the gratitude of a patient speaking. Nothing more. She straightened her apron with trembling hands. Now, I really must attend to my duties. Happy Christmas, Captain Quinn. She walked away quickly, not trusting herself to look back, knowing that if she saw the hurt in his eyes, her carefully maintained resolve might crumble entirely. Later that evening, after the modest celebrations had concluded and most patients were sleeping, Sophia found herself drawn back to the north wing. She told herself she was merely checking on those in her care, but her steps slowed as she approached Oliver's bed. He was asleep, his face peaceful in the dim lamplight, one hand resting on the Wordsworth volume. A folded letter lay beside it, partially open to reveal an ornate seal that she recognized with a jolt, the ducal crest of Westhaven. Against all propriety, she found herself looking closer. The letter was addressed to my dear son, and signed your father. The few visible lines spoke of arrangements being made at the estate and hopes for his swift recovery. Son. The Duke of Westhaven's son. Sophia stepped back, her mind racing. Oliver Quinn was not merely a captain in Her Majesty's cavalry. He was the heir to one of the greatest fortunes in England. The son of a duke. A man so far above her station that the connection she had feared developing between them seemed suddenly laughable in its impossibility. Curiosity, Mrs. Zellwick. Oliver's voice, thick with sleep but tinged with amusement, startled her. I wouldn't have taken you for one who reads private correspondence. I apologize. I was checking on patients and saw the seal. She straightened, gathering her dignity. You never mentioned your connection to Westhaven. Would it have mattered? He pushed himself up to sitting position, fully awake now. Would you have treated me differently had you known? Of course not. But it explains much about your situation. Does it? His eyes held hers steadily. What does it explain, exactly? Why the Duke's secretary inquires after you? Why you spoke of disappointing your father? Why you described yourself as a meant for one life while choosing another? She shook her head. You're not just a captain. You. The Earl of Kendrick, technically. Heir to the Duke of Westhaven. Yes. He gestured dismissively. Titles that meant nothing on the battlefield and mean less here. They mean everything in the world you'll return to. Perhaps I don't wish to return to that world. He leaned forward intently. Perhaps I found something here worth building a different future around. The raw honesty in his voice threatened to unravel her composure entirely. You speak from isolation, my lord. When you're restored to health, surrounded by your family and the comforts of your position, these feelings will fade. My feelings for you are not some fever dream, Sophia. He reached for her hand, but she stepped back. Why can't you believe that? Because I know how the world works. Men of your station do not form lasting attachments to widowed nurses with no family, no connections, and no fortune. She forced herself to continue despite the pain in his eyes. Whatever you believe you feel now will not survive contact with your real life. This is my real life. Here. Now. With you. No. This is an interlude. A moment outside of time. She gestured to the letter. Your father is waiting for you. Your responsibilities. Your destiny. I make my own destiny. His voice hardened with sudden determination. And I choose one with you in it. You cannot choose what society will not permit. Watch me. The challenge in his voice was unmistakable. I have defied expectations before. I will do so again. Sophia felt something dangerous unfurling in her chest, a treacherous hope she couldn't afford to nurture. Rest, my lord. We'll speak no more of this. Oliver, he insisted. I remain Oliver to you, regardless of what other names the world gives me. She couldn't bear to look at him a moment longer, not with hope and determination blazing in his eyes, not with her own heart betraying her with every beat. Good night, Captain Quinn. As she walked away, she heard him call softly after her, You still have not answered my question, Sophia. Is it me you fear, or yourself? She did not turn back, did not answer. But in the silence of her heart, she acknowledged the truth at last. What she feared was not pain, but joy. Not loss, but love. Not the end of things, but their beginning. For how could she bear to taste happiness only to have it snatched away when he inevitably returned to his world, a world where she could never belong? January brought blizzards that isolated Bramley Hospital from the surrounding villages for days at a time. Snow piled in drifts against the windows, and ice transformed the bare trees into crystalline sculptures. Inside, patients and staff alike developed a kind of forced intimacy, thrown together by circumstance and confined by weather. For Sophia, this confinement became increasingly difficult. Since Christmas night, Oliver had maintained a careful courtesy in their interactions, respecting her withdrawal even as his eyes followed her movements with undisguised longing. She found herself simultaneously relieved by and bereft of their previous easy conversations. "He watches you like a man dying of thirst watches water," observed Nurse Collins, a young woman recently arrived from London. "The handsome Earl. Is it true he was wounded saving his entire company?" "I wouldn't know," Sophia replied stiffly. "Captain Quinn's military exploits are not a topic we discuss." "Captain Quinn, is it?" "Not the Earl or his lordship." The younger nurse smiled knowingly. "They say he refuses all visitors except his sister. Turned away 2 lords and a colonel last week." Matron was beside herself. "His recovery requires rest, not social calls." "Rest?" "He walks the corridors for hours. Dr. Emerson says he's fit to travel whenever he chooses." Nurse Collins lowered her voice conspiratorially. "They say he stays because of you." Sophia's hands trembled as she arranged medications on her tray. "Gossip is beneath the dignity of our profession, Nurse Collins." "It's not gossip when everyone can see the truth with their own eyes." The young woman's expression softened. "He cares for you, Mrs. Zellwick." "Deeply." "Is that so terrible?" "It is impossible," Sophia replied, her voice barely audible. "An impossibility leads only to pain." Before the nurse could respond, Matron Mills appeared at the dispensary door. "Mrs. Zellwick." "A word, if you please." In Matron's austere office, Sophia stood with hands clasped, expecting a reprimand about Oliver's prolonged stay or perhaps the whispers circulating among the staff. Instead, Matron handed her a letter bearing the West Haven seal. "This arrived for you this morning. By special messenger who battled through the snow." Matron's expression revealed nothing. "It seems you have the attention of the Duke himself." Sophia stared at the letter in confusion. "There must be some mistake. I have no connection to his grace. Apparently he believes otherwise." Matron gestured to a chair. "Sit, Mrs. Zellwick. Read it. I shall give you privacy." Alone in the silent office, Sophia broke the seal with trembling fingers and unfolded the heavy paper. "Mrs. Sophia Zellwick, you do not know me, but I have heard a great deal about you from my daughter, Lady Eleanor Quinn, who has visited my son during his convalescence. She speaks of your exceptional care and dedication, qualities which have apparently contributed greatly to Oliver's recovery. I write to express my personal gratitude for your attention to my son's well-being. The Quinn family has endured more than its share of loss in recent years, and I feared the war might claim Oliver as it claimed his younger brother 2 years ago. Lady Eleanor informs me that Oliver's physical recovery is complete, yet he resists returning home. She believes, and I have come to agree, that his reasons are of a personal nature and concern you directly. Mrs. Zellwick, I do not pretend to understand the particulars of the connection my son has formed with you. I know only that Oliver has always possessed both a stubborn will and an honest heart. If he has developed feelings for you, I assure you they are genuine. Oliver believes I would object to his forming an attachment to someone of your station. Perhaps once I would have. But war and grief have taught our family the value of true happiness, wherever it may be found. I would welcome the opportunity to meet the woman who has apparently captivated my son's heart and restored his will to live fully rather than merely exist. With sincere regards, Richard Quinn, Duke of West Haven. Sophia read the letter 3 times, each reading increasing her disbelief. The Duke of Westhaven, one of the most powerful men in England, writing to her directly, acknowledging his son's feelings, suggesting he might accept a connection between them. It defied everything she understood about the rigid social order that governed English society. And yet, the evidence lay before her in the Duke's own hand. She was still staring at the letter when Matron returned. Unexpected news, Mrs. Zellwick. Yes. Most unexpected. Concerning the Earl of Kendrick, I presume. When Sophia looked up in surprise, Matron's expression softened slightly. I have been running this hospital for 15 years, Mrs. Zellwick. Little escapes my notice, including the way Lord Kendrick looks at you, and the way you pretend not to notice. Matron, I assure you, no assurance is needed. The older woman sat behind her desk. I've observed your professionalism throughout. But I've also observed your grief these past months. The way you hold yourself apart from life itself, not merely from impropriety. Sophia clutched the letter tightly. My husband would not have wanted this half-existence for you. Matron's voice was gentler than Sophia had ever heard it. Dr. Zellwick was known to me, Mrs. Zellwick. He attended medical conferences with my late husband. He spoke often of his brilliant wife with immense pride. Tears pricked Sophia's eyes at this unexpected connection. You knew Thomas. Not well. But enough to know he valued life and love above all else. He would not have wanted you to build a shrine to his memory at the cost of your own happiness. The word struck Sophia with the force of revelation. Had she been honoring Thomas's memory, or hiding behind it? The Earl is fully recovered, Matron continued briskly. He remains here by choice, not medical necessity. Whatever decision you make regarding his feelings must be made soon. For both your sakes. Sophia stood, suddenly certain of what she must do. Thank you, Matron. For everything. I've done nothing but state what you already knew. Matron waved her toward the door. Now go. I believe you'll find Lord Kendrick in the East Solarium. He's taken to reading there in the afternoons. The East Solarium was bright despite the snow outside, its glass ceiling and walls creating a pocket of warmth in the winter-bound hospital. Oliver sat alone near the farthest window, Wordsworth open on his lap, his profile outlined against the white landscape beyond. Sophia hesitated in the doorway, suddenly acutely aware of the differences between them. He wore a simple shirt and waistcoat, but even in such ordinary clothing, his bearing spoke of privilege and power. The Earl. The future Duke. A man who moved through a world she could scarcely imagine. As if sensing her presence, he looked up. For a moment, neither spoke. Then he smiled, a smile of such genuine warmth that her doubts momentarily retreated. Sophia, he said, closing his book. I was just reading the passage you quoted last week. About nature never betraying the heart that loves her. She moved into the room, the Duke's letter still clutched in her hand. Your father has written to me. His expression shifted to surprise, then wariness. Has he? And what does the great Duke of Westhaven have to say? That you could have left weeks ago. That you stay because of me. She took a deep breath. That he might not object to an attachment between us. Oliver stood, moving toward her with the fluid grace of a man fully healed. And what do you say, Sophia? Does the possibility still terrify you? Yes, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. But perhaps not all terror is to be avoided. He stopped before her, close enough that she could see the hope kindling in his eyes but not so near that she felt trapped. What has changed? I have. She looked down at the letter, then back to his face. Or rather, I've begun to see that the walls I built to protect myself have become a prison. That in avoiding pain, I've also refused joy. And do you want joy, Sophia? His voice was gentle, patient. I want to live again. Truly live, not merely exist. She took a step closer to him. I want to honor Thomas by embracing life as he taught me to, not by shutting myself away from it. Thomas would be proud of you. Oliver's hand reached for hers, and this time she didn't pull away. As I am awed by you, your strength, your intelligence, your compassion hidden beneath that carefully maintained reserve. You see too much. I see you. His fingers intertwined with hers. I have from the beginning, even through fever and pain. Perhaps especially then, when defenses are lowest. And what future do you see for us? She asked, the last of her practical nature asserting itself. Your world can adapt, or I will create a new one. The certainty in his voice was absolute. I am not without resources or determination, Sophia. The question is not what obstacles exist, but whether you are willing to face them with me. She looked into his eyes, searching for doubt or hesitation and finding none. Only clear, unwavering certainty. I have spent 5 years believing that loving deeply meant risking unbearable loss. That safety lay in isolation. And now? Now I wonder if the greater risk is never loving at all. Never allowing oneself to be fully alive. Her free hand rose to touch his face, a gesture of such intimacy that she felt her heart race. You make me want to take that risk, Oliver. His smile was radiant. Then take it. Take it with me. When he kissed her, it was gentle at first, a question, an offering. Then, as her arms wound around his neck, it deepened into something that spoke of passion long restrained, of possibility, of future. Outside, snow continued to fall, each flake unique and perfect and temporary. But within the solarium's glass walls, something permanent had taken root, something that would outlast winter, outlast doubt, outlast even the fear that had kept Sophia isolated for so long. I love you, Oliver whispered against her lips. I have since you commanded me to trust your voice in the darkness. I think perhaps I loved you even then, she admitted. I was simply too afraid to recognize it. He drew back just enough to meet her gaze. Are you still afraid? Yes, she answered honestly. But no longer of loving. Only of wasting another moment not loving you with everything I am. His arms tightened around her as outside, the winter sun broke suddenly through the clouds, transforming the snow-covered world into a landscape of diamond brilliance. It was, Sophia thought as Oliver kissed her again, rather like her heart, frozen for so long, now catching fire and light, creating something more beautiful than she had dared to imagine. Spring 1854. The morning mist rose from the valley below Westhaven Castle, revealing gardens beginning to awaken from winter's slumber. In the Duchess's private sitting room, Sophia stood by the window watching as Oliver directed gardeners in the planting of a new medicinal herb garden, her wedding gift from the Duke. He's quite determined to get every detail right, observed Lady Eleanor Quinn, coming to stand beside her new sister-in-law. Ollie always did throw himself completely into whatever captured his interest. Sophia smiled, watching her husband of 3 months gesture enthusiastically over a bed of lavender. A family trait, I've discovered. Indeed. Father's conversion to radical thinking about interclass marriage has scandalized half the peerage. Eleanor laughed lightly. Though I suspect his joy at seeing Oliver truly happy after James's death would have overcome even greater social obstacles. I still find it difficult to believe sometimes, Sophia admitted, that the Duke welcomed me so warmly. That society has been civil. The wife of the future Duke of Westhaven will always be received, whatever her origins. And those who truly matter see your worth beyond your new title. Eleanor touched her arm gently. Besides, your work with the village medical clinic has already won the loyalty of the tenants. Father says he hasn't seen such health improvements on the estate in 30 years. Sophia turned from the window, surveying the elegant room that still felt somewhat foreign despite the months she had lived at West Haven. I never imagined such a life. Nor did Oliver imagine finding love in a military hospital. Eleanor's expression grew serious. You saved him in more ways than one, you know. After James died, Oliver became reckless, volunteering for increasingly dangerous missions. I believe he was trying to follow our brother. He never speaks of it. He wouldn't. But I saw his letters change after he met you. He began to write of the future again, of possibilities. She squeezed Sophia's hand. You gave him back his will to live, just as he gave you permission to love again. Before Sophia could respond, the door opened and Oliver entered, his face flushed from the garden air, his eyes lighting as they fell on his wife. The herb garden will be magnificent by summer, he announced, crossing to kiss her lightly. The head gardener is skeptical about some of your medicinal choices, but I informed him that my wife knows more about healing properties than the entire Royal College of Physicians. Hardly that, Sophia demurred, though she couldn't help but smile at his unwavering faith in her abilities. I'll leave you too, Eleanor said, moving toward the door. Father wants to discuss the Summer Tenants' Festival, and I promised to help. When they were alone, Oliver drew Sophia into his arms, his expression softening into the intimate tenderness he reserved only for her. Happy, my love. Completely. She rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady heartbeat that had become the center of her world. Though I still wake sometimes expecting to find myself back at Meadowvale Cottage, and all this a dream. If it's a dream, we're dreaming it together. He tilted her face up to his. And I have no intention of waking. 6 months earlier, Sophia could not have imagined such happiness, not merely the material comforts of her new position, but the deep joy of loving and being loved without reservation. Of building a life with a man who saw her completely and cherished what he saw. Of using her medical knowledge to improve the lives of the estate workers and surrounding villages, with Oliver's full support and the Duke's resources behind her. I received a letter from Matron Mills today, she said. The hospital has implemented the hygiene protocols we developed. She says infection rates have dropped dramatically. Of course they have. Oliver's pride in her accomplishments was palpable. Perhaps we should establish a formal research position at Bramley. With the West Haven name behind it, you could transform medical practice throughout the region. You would do that? Use your family's influence for such a purpose. I would use every advantage I possess to help you change the world, Sophia. He kissed her forehead. Did you not yet realize? When I said I chose a destiny with you in it, I meant a destiny we would shape together. She reached up to touch his face, marveling still at the journey that had brought them here, from a fevered soldier and a guarded nurse to husband and wife, Earl and Countess, partners in love and purpose. I spent so long afraid, she murmured. Afraid of loss. Afraid of hope. Afraid of living beyond mere existence. And now? His eyes searched hers. Now I understand what Thomas tried to teach me. That life must be lived fully, with an open heart, despite its uncertainties. She smiled up at him. That love is not safety, but courage. The courage to risk everything for joy. Outside, spring sunshine broke through the last of the morning mist, illuminating the awakening gardens where new growth pushed through soil recently frozen. Like Sophia's heart, once barricaded against pain, now blossoming with a love she had never dared to imagine. Oliver's arms tightened around her, and in them, she found not the prison she had once feared love to be, but the freedom she had always sought, the freedom to be fully herself, fully alive, fully loved. "My wounded soldier," she whispered against his lips. "How fortunate I am that winter brought you to me." "How fortunate I am," he replied, "that you had the courage to heal more than just my wounds." Together, they stood in the strengthening sunlight, two souls who had found each other against all odds, a duke's son and a country doctor's widow, united by a love powerful enough to overcome the barriers of class, circumstance, and even their own fears. And in that moment, as Oliver's lips met hers, Sophia knew with absolute certainty that some risks were worth taking. That some loves were worth every fear conquered. That sometimes, the greatest courage was simply opening one's heart to joy,